Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The pandemic has certainly put a lot of stress on businesses of all shapes and sizes, big, small, privately owned, franchises, big corporate stores, whatever it might be. They've all sought ways to adapt or die during this pandemic. And today we get to look at how some of these companies have made changes that are ultimately a win for you, the consumer. And yes, we're going to talk about consumer-facing businesses, primarily for the first and second segment of today's show. But in the third segment, we really want you to stick around because we're going to talk about UPS and something very unique they're doing to help their employees prepare for emergencies. Because I think when we think about the changes being made, we're going to be thinking about the ones that we talk about in the first and second segment, the ones that we all notice. But we're going to also look at internal company changes that are good changes probably in the long run. So we've got a lot to review today to share with you the changes that businesses are making. But of course, we couldn't begin that conversation without
TrueChat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, we've talked about it before, Justin, and we've been shopping here in our homestead differently since March than we ever had before. We're buying everything on the computer. I mean, we haven't been in a grocery store or a box goods store of any kind. Everything has been bought over the internet. And before, we had maybe done that 2 or 3 times in our lifetime. So these changes that we're talking about today are very relevant to what has been able to keep us basically quarantined here in the house to protect the health of both of us. And so it's kind of interesting to see is what will stick around, what will continue. These changes that they've made, many of them in the articles, they talked about how it's improved efficiency and they're going to keep this up after this all ends, once we get to the other side. So that'll be the interesting part, is to see how much of these companies keep and how much we as the consumer drive, whether they keep it or not, or whether they revert to the old way that they did business.
So let's lead off, Lance, with one of the companies that I think stands out in a unique position. Thousands of restaurants, as many as 15,000, according to some estimates, have failed as a result of the pandemic, right? Permanently closed, not reopening, no chance of coming back. So when we talk about restaurants, the natural assumption would be, well, they're not doing well, right? They're hurting pretty bad. Well, and that is the case for many of them. But according to this Wall Street Journal article, the title, most businesses were unprepared for COVID-19. Domino's delivered. And yes, aren't they? They're punny, right? They've got some fun there. Speaking of puns and words and so forth, Lance, before we dive too far in, do we have a word of the day?
We do. The word is trismus, Trismus. And it is a noun, and it is the continuous contraction of the muscles of the jaw.
Okay.
Gnashing. Okay. Trismus. Trismus.
That's definitely our most a word that I had not heard before today. All the other ones I'm familiar with, but Trismus, no.
Just trying to be a little punny there. It is the holiday season.
Are you constantly clenching your jaw because it's the holiday season?
There are times on this show when I'm constantly gnashing my jaw and as I'm waiting for my turn to talk. Yes, that has happened on occasion. Okay. Plus you let off with pizza. And so, you must contract your jaw and gnash on the pizza, especially cold pizza, which I love to eat cold pizza.
So speaking of pizza, Domino's, right? So Lance, the story here is they not only have been able to offset any losses, their sales have actually increased 16%. So they're doing better. And part of the reason is before the pandemic even hit, they were testing what basically we've come to know as car-side pickup. Now, they weren't calling it that, but what you could do is if you were in the app or online and you ordered, you could opt to pull up to the restaurant, have somebody come out and just put it in your trunk. Open your trunk and they'll put it in and you drive away. And this was back in 2019 before the pandemic hit. They were working on it anyway. So when the pandemic hit, they gave it a name, they formalized it, rolled it out to every store. And part of the story here with Domino's, Lance, is that they had already been investing for years in making ordering as easy and fast as possible. One thing that I actually found really interesting that this article mentions, they made it so that you can set your app on your phone so that if you open the app and do nothing for 10 seconds, your favorite pizza is automatically ordered. All you do is just open the app and wait 10 seconds and you're done.
Right. Your ordering
exactly
is
your preferred method, so that could be delivery. It could be carry out. You just have it set. And if you don't do anything, pizza's on the way. So I think this is a story, right, of a company that's been investing in its own technology. And I think that's key too. They don't use hardly any third-party services. So one of the things that has caused, I think, a lot of headaches for some businesses during the pandemic as they're making these switches, right, is they're having to integrate all these third-party services in order to execute what they plan to do, which means a lot more training, more money out the door, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes into that. Well, Domino's has been investing for years in this stuff. So really, it didn't have to drastically change anyway.
Don't a lot of restaurants before the pandemic, I'm thinking of places like Applebee's and Texas Roadhouse around here, who had curbside delivery where you could call in and just drive up, with the kids in the car, and they would bring it out to you. So this is something that, being in a rural area, we don't see all the time. But I think a lot of people have used it in the past. So, Domino's was, like you said, just ahead of the game. And the fact that when you do it all in-house, you control the cost, right? There have been some pressures on the industry because of all of the people who are at home making their own pizzas or buying pizzas now at a higher rate, that the cost of some of the ingredients has gone up, and Domino's has still been able to run their market sales, which is an interesting concept as well.
Their CEO pointed out, Lance, that the pandemic has just accelerated the trends that were already in place, to your point, right? And everybody should know, if you're familiar with Domino's, right, there's not hardly any Domino's that rely on dine-in business. They're almost all not exclusively pickup or delivery or carry out, but they're mostly delivery and carry out. So they were already positioned in such a way that lent itself to this. Yeah, they've made some changes like everybody has, but for the most part, they were investing in this ahead of time because they said, hey, the trend here is that for pizza, most people are expecting that to be delivered or to take it home or to take it to a party, right? That's what they're doing. So Domino's for many years has not really emphasized dine-in experience at all. They did acknowledge, though, Lance, right, that they do expect a return at some point to being able to hand a pizza directly to a customer. They're not saying that, hey, there's never going to be that again. It's just they already have those systems. They were already working on them because they're responding to what people already want, which, if you're on your way home, right, and you want to pick up a pizza, generally speaking, you probably want that to be a fast and efficient thing where you don't have to wait a long time and you don't have to interact with a lot of people because you're probably just trying to get it and go.
The Christmas there began when you said dine-in experience at Domino's. It's like, what? I have never seen that.
Right. I haven't either.
Because that's one of the so if anybody out there knows that, let us know, because I have never had that experience. That's something I might put on my bucket list, is to sit down inside of a Domino's to eat. Now, I have opened my pizza while talking to members of the Domino team. Once they handed me my pizza in the old days, I've opened my pizza up and started eating it while I was talking to former students.
So you were dining in.
But yes, but I guess I did dine in, but there wasn't a table or a chair or anything. I was eating my pizza standing at the counter while talking to some former students. But it's an interesting concept, and it is one that it will be interesting to see how many people continue to use it, and the other side of it, how many companies continue to offer it once we get to the other side of this.
Well, and pizza too, right? Because you think about other restaurants and it's like, well, why don't they make this pivot? And I think a lot of them are trying to. We've seen even even in our small town, Lance, right? Lots of the locally owned businesses offer some version now of curbside or carry out or something. One of the things is pizza. Part of the reason it's always been one of those main staples as a delivery or carry out item is because it happens to be a food that is uniquely good for transporting, right? Where there's a lot of foods at restaurants, it doesn't work so well, or it's very difficult to keep warm, or it doesn't reheat well. And we all know, right? I mean, probably almost everybody listening, you've all had leftover pizza, right? And is it as good as when it's hot? I don't know. Some people actually like their cold pizza better, right? Lance is raising his hand. So, I mean, it is one of those foods that in that respect, I don't think I've ever looked and said, oh man, we got leftovers. That's not good because that's not going to be any good later. It's like, no, that's what part of why you get it is to have the leftovers.
Well, we don't have it here yet, but I can't imagine with your food delivery places, what would happen with a French fry from one of the major hamburger chains. I can't make it home with them. I can see, right, because when I get them in town and decide I'm going to drive home to eat, I eat the French fries in the bag on the way home, because once I get home, the French fries are nasty. Once they get cold, I mean, it doesn't matter which one of the three big chains you get. I've never eaten any cold French fries that I thought were just, can't wait, and they don't even warm up on our stone well at all. So, the Grubhub and those places like that, the delivery places, even though we don't have them here, I can't imagine getting, the only other fast food besides pizza would be like Taco Bell. Because, like Taco Bell lasts forever. I mean, it's got so many nasty ingredients in it and everything else that, I mean, and I say that lovingly because I looked at my wife and said, the last 3 weeks, that's all I've been craving
is Taco Bell.
Is just a cheap Mexican Taco Bell, just a bag of Taco Bell sitting on the table, going in and grabbing it and, throwing some hot sauce on it. That's one of my cravings. So, no disparity there towards Taco Bell, but you're right. Pizza and Taco Bell travel well. The rest of the stuff, haven't tried it, but I don't think it would travel as well.
And that's where these businesses are looking at new innovations, and the pandemic's accelerated that. And that's kind of what the whole conversation's about today is ultimately, whether or not there was a pandemic, the fact that Domino's has invested in this way is decreasing the amount of time and energy it takes you to place an order. Does that help them? Of course, because, all their research indicates the easier it is to order, right? The simpler that process is, the more likely people are to order not only more food, but more frequently. And that's key to their business. At the same time, though, it is a benefit for you, right? Because if that's what you want, the less time that you waste doing it, the better it is for you. And so that's where these innovations are paving the way, right, for probably some lasting changes. And in the next segment, we're going to talk about 3 other businesses that have an upside and downside that might kind of surprise you, right? Some of these big name businesses, what are they doing during the pandemic and what are they going to do afterwards? I think that's kind of really interesting to look at. So we've got a lot more to come. UPS as well in the third segment. How are they helping employees save for emergencies during a pandemic? Well, to find out, you'll have to keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
As the pandemic continues, all manner of businesses have been forced to adapt in one way or another. Not the least among those, Lance, the hospitality business. Yes? Specifically,
one of the biggest.
Yeah, specifically hotels, right? Because when there's a pandemic and people are not really traveling very much, the hotel business is hit hard. And so we're referencing a Wall Street Journal article here, folks. You can find it linked at thestateofus.org. So feel free to take a look. There are 12 different businesses this article highlights. We're not going to go over all of them, but we each picked one to review. So we're going to review 3 today. And mine is Marriott International. So this is one of those interesting and kind of straightforward on the downside, right? The upside's the interesting part. Obviously, the hotel industry has suffered quite a bit through its worst period in modern times, as the pandemic has led to worldwide cutbacks in business travel and cancellations of conference events. Because that's where Marriott really makes its regular money, right? Because we all think about hotels, generally speaking. Most people listening probably think about them in the respect of, I'm going on vacation somewhere, I'm going to visit family, whatever. But really, for big chains like Marriott, what they're counting on are those corporate customers making those trips all the time, and those conferences. That's where they're making a lot of their money. And so Marriott was obviously hit hard initially. The worst quarter that they've ever seen, was the quarter ending in June. But the upside here, Lance, and this is really interesting, in China, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, Marriott's occupancy rate, in the region took a big hit, but it's already back up to 60% occupancy in the second quarter, which it was at 70% in 2019. So really, you're talking about almost, 10%, but given everything going on, that's a pretty interesting recovery. And I guess in addition to that I want you to react to, their CEO said, they're disappointed, I think is the wording that he used, that a lot of businesses in the U.S. have said that they're just going to stay closed, halfway through next year. Because his whole thing was kind of, they didn't have businesses do that overseas. And now that things are, for them, because they went through that heavy shutdown phase earlier than we did, now that for them, certain things are starting to come back, they're seeing a return to that. And so his criticism there is not saying that businesses should reopen, but saying that he also thinks it's premature for businesses to say, hey, we're just gonna stay closed. It doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter what's going on. We're not coming back until whenever. And that is one of the things that I think highlights something greater in the pandemic, right? Which is the way that businesses are interconnected and rely so much on each other. Marriott has almost no business if you eliminate all travel. I mean, that's what they're built around.
I think that Marriott's CEO is comparing apples to oranges. When you talk about Asia, they had much stricter shutdowns. They had much more compliance with masking and the rules. And so they were able really to get their numbers down to a level that we in the United States never did. And I think we are seeing that as a nation, we're paying the price right now. On the other side, though, I'm a big hotel user. I mean, this is really that the last time I was out, that's where we were. We were staying somewhere during spring break. My wife and I both being educators. We were staying at a hotel when the pandemic was hit and said, you got to go home. And so we left, but we spend, 10 to 20 days easily. And we're anticipating with my wife trying to retire in the next year or two, spending a lot more time in hotels. So we're a major customer. Like you said, the Monday through Thursday crowd or the Sunday through Thursday crowd is what they're looking for, because that's the business crowd, the ballrooms that they can open up and bring in 200 people for a day service or whatever, or guests that will stay because there's a 2 or 3 day symposium or expo going on. That's how hotels really make their money, not on travelers like me, but we're still, that's a lot of days when you have people like me who would travel for the weekends or to get 2 or 3 days here or a week here. And I don't see us, I don't know if I'm not sure we're going to do that in 2021, even if a vaccine comes out and, not to digress from that, but I think that's a very interesting, idea is to see how quickly everybody gets back out on the road and starts to travel, and business will lead the way because they'll be the guinea pigs. And if they're successful and healthy, then the rest of us will follow.
What business did you pick out, Lance? What stood out to you?
Mine's P&G, Procter & Gamble, a local here.
Cincinnati.
In Ohio. Yep. And something I learned back in 7th grade history, one of those big, good Ohio companies that have been around a long time. But the downside was what I thought was important. I didn't realize this, and I think we forget about it here in the United States. But the downside for P&G was that it crimped growth in China, which is P&G's 3rd biggest market. and till today still continues to drag on some of his more profitable products like high-end skincare and razors. So I think we forget about that. It's like, well, this is an American company. They sell in America. Well, they also sell around the world. And that's important to them being able to offer things to us as well. The obvious upside is that it's a lot of cleaning supplies. And so P&G has been able to recover quite well, has seen at the printing of this article, 10% growth, in sales this year. And obviously none of us have given this thought because most of the time when you're either in the store or you're ordering online and they say, oh, I can get wipes, I can get cleaning supplies, it's there. Awesome. You're excited to see it, but because of the demand, P&G is not offering sales. We're all paying full price for most of that stuff because there's no reason for them to offer a sales to us because they're selling the stuff as quickly as they can get it on the shelves. So, that's an upside for the company. And it's something that we don't even think about these days because most of us are just excited to see that we're going to get the product.
Well, and for those of you that don't know, just to be clear, you might be saying, what's Procter & Gamble? I almost guarantee you that if you take a moment to look around your house, you've got at least 4 or 5 things that company makes. And that's because as a company, they don't brand basically anything Procter & Gamble. They have multiple brands. Cascade, right? The dishwasher detergent. Dawn, the dishwash liquid. Febreze, odor eliminators. Gain, laundry and home detergents, right? Tide. Yep.
Gain,
Crest,
Tide,
toothpaste,
yep.
On and on, right? So there's a pretty good chance that if you have toothpaste or you wash dishes or you use shampoo or, almost any home-based product like that, you've got at least something from Procter & Gamble in your house, all manners of cleaners, like Lance said. So it makes sense that they were able to weather the storm. Sales in their high-end stuff is down, but sales in the basic necessities like sanitizers, cleaners, etc., obviously way up with the pandemic. So let's turn to the one and only, the Devon creature in the control room. He's got his company picked out. What is it?
I decided to choose Starbucks this time around for a company.
Do you like Starbucks? Like, generally speaking, do you go there?
I don't hate them. There are some things I don't align with their company values, but really, other than that, their coffee's okay. I'll drink it.
Their coffee's okay. Wow. Okay. So half of our audience just left because they're like, the Devon creature just said that Starbucks is okay. And they're the daily Starbucks
I'm
crowd.
sorry, but the depot here in town is just way better.
I can't see Lance's face. I'm not sure we've got full agreement. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just can't. I can't. I really can't comment. I have family members that work at Starbucks, and my daughters love Starbucks. But I've never purchased a product. Yeah, whatever.
Starbucks.
I don't purchase it because I can't. I mean, I'm a huge coffee drinker. I mean, I drink basically a pot of coffee. Your whole
salary would go to Starbucks
throughout the entire day. But I can't afford it. With the way I drink coffee, so I don't get their drinks nor their food because I think it's very high end and overpriced. So I don't have the political misgivings that the Devon creature does. I just have the monetary misgivings in that I can't afford that high end stuff. I mean, I get my off brand 50% decaf and well water and just mix it up and drink it like crazy.
So Devon, the story here, right, with Starbucks, a little bit like Domino's.
Yeah, it pretty much seemed to align a lot with Domino's in a way, but really they took a really big hit in January, right when the pandemic was starting. But they experienced it a little bit earlier in the year because China, their market, was going downhill a little bit earlier than ours was, so that affected Starbucks a little bit more. Although what really surprised me, amongst them going through COVID-19, they decided to give its employees 6 weeks paid off of time if they chose to take it, which they didn't have to. And they even gave the possibility of a leave of absence if people weren't willing to return, which really just stood out to me for this company because I haven't seen that almost anywhere else. Maybe just a handful of other companies. But really the upside that they experienced was that they decided to create more go-to locations, which to me is a great idea. Every time I've been to a Starbucks, I'm in and out or I go through the drive-thru.
I think it's kind of fascinating because, Lance, I don't know about you, but when I've always thought of Starbucks, at least, when I first became familiar with them, however many years ago, the thinking was, it's this place that's become kind of like a hangout, right? For people to go in and work and, whatever, meet. And I would be lying if I've said I haven't had, I don't know how many meetings over the years at a Starbucks, because that's where somebody else, I've never proposed a meeting at a Starbucks, not judging anybody that has, but I have been asked to meet people at Starbucks before, and I have. I also probably would offend our listeners, Lance. I'd offend the other two people on the show. I don't drink coffee, never have. So, Starbucks has no affinity in my book other than I get to see it on our bank statements because somebody else in the house.
Our audience is just shaking their head like that explains a lot about Justin.
That's right.
Yeah. That explains a lot of his views and ideas that he doesn't drink coffee. But no, to your point, the first time that I encountered a Starbucks was inside a bookstore.
Right.
So, I've always been interested with their marketing. I know they have standalone stores now, but they always place them inside someplace where people are walking around or browsing or shopping. And it makes sense. Oh yeah, I'll go get a coffee, or I'll go get a drink, whatever your favorite Starbucks drink is. Because, you walk into a bookstore, if you're like me, you're going to spend a couple hours anyway. And to have some kind of drink in your hand while you're doing that is genius, and the same with, they're in a lot of grocery stores now. So you walk over and you get your drink and then you push through the store and do your shopping. So, it's a marketing genius, with what they've done.
Well, and so Devon, the thinking here though, right, is that they're now focusing on converting locations or closing locations and reopening them almost exclusively as to-go places.
Yeah, they're actually going to or planning on remodeling or renovating and or moving around 400 stores. Wow. They've decided. So they could be spreading them out more, but I think they're definitely planning on adding more of a to-go feature to the stores. And I think in the newer stores they're also trying to make smaller as to reduce the carbon footprint as well, which I thought was very nice.
So yeah, the article makes that point that they're reducing the footprint, which obviously also reduces their costs, but reduces their carbon footprint, and also is responding to something they were seeing before the pandemic, which is more people wanting the to-go stuff anyway. Kind of that shift away from what Lance and I talked about, some of what brought Starbucks to notoriety, which was it, encouraging people to hang out all day at its store. And now sort of kind of a different move there. But we're going to talk about another different move as well coming up, and that's UPS is to offer employees a way to save for emergencies. Sounds really interesting. We've talked about emergency funds on this show before, but here's a company that's stepping up and saying, hey, we're going to help employees do this. What exactly are they doing? Well, to find out, keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Lance, you brought this article to our attention, a couple weeks ago now, and I remember when you first brought it up, it sounded interesting because this shipping giant, UPS, is joining other companies in offering basically rainy day funds inside of 401k plans, right?
One of the best pieces of advice I got as a young worker was a gentleman said, you have to pay yourself first. If you're ever going to save any money, you have to pay yourself first. Meaning when you get your paycheck, put aside whatever amount you want, 1%, 10%, 20%, put aside that money every paycheck and then live off of what's left. What this does is UPS is allowing their workers to take up to 5%, save 5% of their paycheck and put it in an IRA-like fund, meaning that it's an after-tax thing. So, but they can put it in and invest in the same shares that they do for their stock portfolio, for their 401k that they have through the company. But what's interesting here is at this point, when you are ready to take it out, it's set up in an account so that all the money you have put in is non-taxed. So if you save $500 in this account, it might earn 3 or 4%, 10% profit. Well, on the $500 that you put in, you can take it out at any time and not have to claim it for income tax. You can have all the advantages of earning a higher interest rate by investing this money. But when it comes time to take it out, the amount that you have put in, you can take out tax free. I think it's a beautiful concept, and I think it's something that needs to be offered around the country.
That tax-free earnings obviously is a big incentive for people because there aren't a lot of ways that you can do that. You're setting aside that 5%, right? Well, over time, it's not going to take very long for you to have a pretty sizable emergency fund there just based off of the 5%. Forget about your earnings. Then you can take out everything that you put in directly, and you're not going to have to pay taxes on that, additional taxes on that because you paid it before it went in. And your earnings can sit aside there. And as long as you don't take those until 59 and a half, until you're basically 60 years old, those will be tax-free, at that point. If you take them before that, then obviously you got to pay your taxes on them, a penalty. But I think it's still a really interesting idea because if you're going to be setting the money aside anyway, you can put up to 5% aside for your emergency fund. We talk about all the time, Lance, right? We just had a show a couple months ago where we talked about big mistakes you're making with your money. And folks, if you haven't listened to that one, search it, please, because I think it's one of those that people need to be aware about. UPS has 90,000, Lance, non-unionized U.S. workers. So, I mean, it's got a pretty big workforce. And it's offering that opportunity to basically everybody.
Well, and what, some of the investment companies said, it's like Voya said that many people had to withdraw from their 401k due to financial hardships and because they didn't have a rainy day fund. And it's like this allows you to go ahead and invest your money, but then have it available for you when you need it. So it's like you get the advantage of long-term financial security and planning, retirement planning, but at the same time, you can have access to it whenever you want without a penalty. So if you never have to touch it, knock on wood, you never have to use your rainy day fund, you continue to earn the same rate of return as you do on your 401k. I mean, you can even put it in the same, I like these companies. You can do that. And so, I mean, that's just like, to me, it's a win-win situation. You can save money for a rainy day fund, but it's not sitting in the bank earning, 0.1% or whatever, or it's not buried in your backyard in a coffee can or,
that's where Lance keeps his money. His coffee can.
It's not in the corner of the pillowcase, earning 0% interest. You can earn money on it towards your retirement but it's available if you need it, without having to pay income tax on it because you've already paid the tax on it. To me, it's a win-win situation. I don't know why people wouldn't do it. I mean, they should just hop on it. Just divert 5% of what you put in your 401k anyway. Just divert that into the rainy day fund because you're earning the same amount of returns on it anyway. And then you've got that built up. And hopefully you never have to use it and you're no worse for wear. But it's in the back of your mind. It's like, I've got that if I need it.
It seems like from a company standpoint, it makes a lot of sense too, because if you're already offering options like this, adding this option, yes, is it a nice perk to offer to employees? But think about the practical side. And you touched on it just briefly, Lance. I think it's important to emphasize though. We talk about, issues with why people can't keep their jobs. It's not always because of something the company does. Sometimes it's because a person gets into a situation, right, where they lose transportation because car breaks down and, or whatever, and they don't have a way to pay for it. And something happens with their house. I mean, and that is unfortunately and sadly, that happens all too often where somebody doesn't want to lose their job, but they lose it because of something outside of their work life that comes up unexpectedly. Illness of a loved one, right? Whatever that suddenly hampers their ability to work. And it's like, hey, if you're able to have a rainy day fund And if we as a company can make it easier for you to do that when we're already offering, retirement planning anyway, why wouldn't we do that? Because it increases the likelihood that we can retain workers. And as we've talked about so many times, right? Far cheaper to keep an existing worker than it is to hire a new one. Which is part of why even big companies sometimes aren't as hardline, especially during the pandemic, right, with people, because they're worried about finding those new workers. And so I think it's something that, all the major companies, I would think, would look into, because just a simple business, thing.
Yeah, as you point to it, the article does say that over 20 companies offer this. So it's out there. So, if you're working right now, obviously ask for it, because it may be there and you just, didn't look at the weekly newsletter in your paycheck, or it's direct deposit. So you didn't read the email. You didn't care because what you get paid. And so you don't look at it. It may be available and you don't even know it. Or if it's not there, like we always say, at the end of the show, ask for it. If it's something that you want, go to HR and say, hey, can we look into offering this? This is something I've heard about or read about, and I think the company needs to offer this, because it, other than the bookkeeping to set it up, after that, it pretty much just takes care of itself. So it should be a low cost perk for companies to offer to their workers, which during this kind of time is huge.
I'm going to be getting a call from True Chat's HR department that Lance and Devon are demanding that we start offering 401k.
I'm all into it. I mean, I'd love to give 5% that I can earn money market returns on, that I can have access to at any time with no tax due on it. I think it's great. I mean, I'm all in.
Send an email, Lance. Get the word into the HR department. We'll see if they bring it up.
It's already been sent. When we were on the show, I sent that in.
Well, we know Devon did, because he doesn't listen to the show anyway, so he's busy with other stuff. Getting HR squared away. Telling them, hey, listen, I'm leaving, right? If you don't do this.
He's looking up some funky food for New Year's or something, the frozen turkey salad wasn't a big hit. So he's looking up for a new New Year's Eve, venture.
Is that what we got? So Lance, what were we trying to do today? What were we hoping to accomplish to further for our listeners?
Well, as always here at True Chat, our mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And I think we've done that. We've talked about some good and some bad. We've talked about some opportunities that are out there. And if you say, man, these guys make sense, I really like that. Well, thank you. We appreciate that. But we really appreciate it if you go tell some other people about it and get them to listen. And if they say, well, okay, so you're telling me about these guys and they're entertaining and they're informative and they're respectful. Where do I find them? Well, tell them they can find us on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and everywhere podcasts are found.
The State of Us is released as a podcast Tuesdays and Thursdays by 4 a.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. We are also a syndicated radio program that you can hear in select talk markets across the nation on the weekends. So be sure to check your local talk station. If they don't carry The State of Us, call them up. Tell them they should. For The State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
And just so everybody knows, I've won the last 2 Word of the Day contest. It hasn't been mentioned. I'm Lance Jackson.
And I'm Devon McCain.
Special thanks to our editing producer, Bradley Butch. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.